Hey there everybody, and Happy New Year. My name is Bradson Henry, and welcome to the first episode of a series focused all on Unity's multiplayer networking system. So what you've probably already figured out is this series is all about the Unity multiplayer networking, and my goal is to walk you through the process of how to make your own multiplayer game using Unity's multiplayer networking, and also to really just teach you all about the different principles that you'll need to know to be successful while using it. So I'm super pumped and super excited about this whole video series because there is so much to do. It's a new year and I'm excited to show all these new things with you guys. So let's go ahead and get started with today's episode. In this episode, it's my goal to demystify the Unity multiplayer networking library so you can get a good start on what we'll be doing throughout the series, and so you'll just have an understanding of what Unity multiplayer's networking is and how you can use it. So let's start from the very beginning. What is Unity multiplayer networking? So basically, it's Unity's approach at doing multiplayer game development in the Unity game engine. Unity's previous approach of doing multiplayer networking was using UNet. We're not going to talk too much about UNet, but all you need to know is that previously it was using UNet, and now they're using what's called ML API. I'll take some time a little bit later in this video to break down what ML API and what you really need to start to know about it before you get started with it. Another big thing to know is that this is all based on what's called Unity Netcode. And basically Unity Netcode is kind of a mid-level networking library that allows you to really easily use a lot of the different networking things that you will need to make a Unity multiplayer game. And it kind of tries to simplify a lot of the more difficult processes that go into making a multiplayer game. So one of the really cool things about Unity Netcode is that it makes publishing to a lot of different platforms pretty easy. So out of the box with Unity Netcode, you get the ability to publish to PC, to Mac, to Linux, and also to most modern consoles. So that means PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch. One thing to note is that Unity Netcode does not support WebGL publishing. So just be aware when you're building your project that you can't use Unity networking out of the box for your WebGL projects. So let's now take a moment to talk about what is ML API. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but Unity's original networking approach was using UNet. Now, I'm not going to talk about UNet, but just be aware that originally how Unity approached doing networking was through that process, and now they approach it using ML API. Essentially what ML API is a framework or a library that allows developers to focus more on the game development and less on the networking protocols and networking interfaces that are needed to make a multiplayer game work. So what that really means at the end of the day is that ML API is essentially just code that allows you to enable multiplayer inside of your Unity code easily. It gives you functions, code patterns, and all the different things that you need to quickly and easily implement networking code into your Unity project. One cool thing to note is that the ML API networking library was originally an open source project built by the Unity developers community, and what happened is Unity saw the power and the promise in this particular set of code, and they said, hey, we want to acquire this and bring this into our Unity ecosystem. So with the acquisition by Unity, ML API basically became the gold standard for Unity networking, and now Unity has its full support behind it, and that means that for a long time we're going to have a lot of support by Unity and the community with this networking framework. So now that we know a little bit about Unity networking in general and a little bit about ML API, let's talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of using Unity's networking library. So let's start off with the advantages. So the first major advantage that the Unity networking library brings to the table is that it is an off-the-shelf solution for networking. So what that basically means, instead of you having to go out as a developer looking for a networking library to integrate into Unity project, now you know that out of the box you have a Unity supported networking library right at your fingertips to integrate directly into your projects. Probably one of the coolest things about that is that from project to project you have a repeatable process or repeatable set of code that you can use in creating your multiplayer games. That is a huge advantage for developers as they're thinking through their next projects and their projects to come. Another huge advantage of using the Unity networking library is that you get the backing and support of Unity themselves in this networking library. The reason this is so great is because now you can be sure for at least the foreseeable future that Unity is going to fully back this project for the long term. What's really cool about that is that if you were to use some other networking library that is not directly supported by Unity, you don't really know if in a year or 2 or 6 months if that particular networking library will still exist and still be usable in the iterations of Unity to come. But you can now be sure using Unity's networking library that anytime Unity makes a new version of Unity, that they're going to really focus on making sure that the networking library is supported and can be used when you're creating your game projects. So now let's talk a little bit about some of the disadvantages that might come with using the Unity networking library. One disadvantage of using Unity's networking library is implementation customization. What I mean by that is that if you are a developer looking to do something unique, different, or special using the networking library out of the box that's given to you by Unity, you're going to find some difficulty in making that happen. Say for example, you want to go for a completely different approach on how Unity networking manages game objects across the server. You're going to have a lot of difficulty making that happen. You're probably going to have difficulty trying to find a way to change code that is deeply nested into this Unity networking framework, and you're going to find yourself really fighting against the code to make special customizations or special things happen in your networking project. Another disadvantage that will come with using Unity networking library is trying to create a game project that implements a remote or dedicated server implementation. So what do I mean by that? If you've seen my other series that was all about creating a multiplayer game server with Unity and Red Hat OpenShift, you're probably familiar with the local player hosted game server approach and the dedicated or cloud game server approach. Because I've covered these two approaches pretty extensively in other videos, I'm not going to cover it here, but I will share a link in the description on more about this topic. So basically what I really mean is that it's difficult for you as a game developer using the Unity networking library to create a dedicated server version of your game using Unity's networking library. Primarily, Unity's networking library is focused on allowing developers to create games where players can host their game on their local machine and allow other players to join in with them. So really, that's all we're going to cover today. I wanted to spend some time really focusing on the overall picture of Unity's networking library, and I want to demystify a few things about what it is, what its advantages are, and what some of its disadvantages are. In our next video, we'll be covering the core principles behind ML API and the functionality that we'll be using when we're creating the code to create our Unity multiplayer game. So make sure to stick around because there's a lot more to learn and a lot more I'd like to share with you all. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Many more videos to come in the series and much more to learn together on this journey. As always, thank you for watching, and until next time, peace.